all of the different pieces, like they just continue to unfold. Like it's not over once your Saturn return is over necessarily. Like it's like groundwork gets laid. It's an initiation. It's the beginning, the setting of the stage for what is ultimately going to unfold for the next 29 and a half years. A couple days after I moved to Kansas was when we took possession of the grocery store. So walking in there for the first time, I was like, what the fuck have I done? It stunk. It was so gross. But with, 8 months of TLC and, about $1 million, we were able to turn it around. And so the inside and the outside, I personally think came out beautifully. And again, I had never done a construction remodel project. I had never opened a grocery store, obviously. And those 8 months of learning and building and learning and making mistakes and costing myself money because I made mistakes and got to redo it because that was wrong and like whatever else, like it was such a valuable education as far as seeing myself doing something that I had never done before. And walking out the other side of that experience, my confidence, again, basically now I know I can learn anything I set my mind to, and I know I can open basically any business because it's just a matter of like basic business skills, basic project management skills, and being able to learn the technical aspects of whatever industry you're in. So I can open any business. Like I wonder what my second Saturn return will bring, but that confirmation was worth its weight in gold as far as like going back to the beginning when like I first got handed that deservability treatment and I was wrapped up in jealousy issues and so depressed with my life. And it's like the answer all along was self-esteem, self-value, self-worth. And I feel like my Saturn return, that was the consequence of doing, like showing up to the task, like showing up to the mountain that wanted to be climbed. And what I got out of it was self-worth. So, like, again, you can take that to the bank. Confidence in ourselves, oh my gosh, like it's like bubble wrap for being in this world. Like the world is traumatizing. There's contrast everywhere you look. And the ability to be resilient in the middle of all of it is so much about knowing that you can land on your feet. And having that confidence in yourself is a matter of having seen yourself do it before. And during your Saturn return, like either you're gonna watch yourself do some really incredible things that you had no idea you were capable of, or you're gonna walk out of it depressed. And that just sounds like obviously not nearly as much fun. So, my 2 cents. And then on December 20th was when Saturn moves into Capricorn. And from there, it's like, okay, so we leave it at December 20th of 2017. And at that point, we were about 3 months from opening the grocery store. And at that point, it's like a whole nother beast to run a grocery store than it is to open one. So I wanted to provide like just since the end of my Saturn return. So like I said, I'm almost 34. So in the 4.5 years since December of 2017, what's unfolded? So it starts with February 28th of 2018 was when the grocery store opened. And that first year I took up cake decorating. That was like kind of my outlet as far as like how I kept my creative juices flowing. I started decorating cakes. I had never done that before, but I always liked to draw and paint, and turns out those skills basically translate onto cake decorating, like painting with frosting. So I did like, 200 cakes or something like that year. So that's, that was fun. And because I opened Cecil K's, it was in June of 2019 when I got invited to the state FFA convention to give one of their keynote speeches. And that is relevant because at that speech, when I was backstage before it was my turn to go out, one, I always say yes to giving speeches because I love to give speeches. But while I was backstage, I was visiting with an old mentor of mine and we were catching up, and it just felt really good and fun. She was who had invited me there to do the speech. And she was like, hey, do you know Jody so-and-so? She's a past state officer from Nebraska. And I was like, no, I've never heard of her. She's like, look her up on Facebook. You two you feel the same to me. I don't know what that means, but that's what I want to say. You feel the same to me. I think you would really like her. And so I looked her up on Facebook, and she did Facebook Lives at that time. So I watched like 5 minutes of one of her lives, and I was like, holy crap, I love this girl. I have to meet her. And she lives in Nebraska. So I recorded a video of myself like saying, hi, I'm Carly. You don't know me, but so-and-so told me that I should reach out to you and that I would really like you. I looked at your page. You seem really cool. If you want to be my friend, I'm on Marco Polo. You can reach out to me here. And she reached out to me, and we became such good friends. And that's super relevant because the next year, fast forward into 2020, obviously that's when the pandemic happened, and that prolonged me managing the store by a little bit, but it was also wildly informative because, again, I feel like running the grocery store in the middle of the pandemic was me getting to see my superpowers in action like never before. Like, I recognized that while the pandemic was starting, it was like basically everyone around me was caught under the wave of change and uncertainty, and I was riding on top of it. I was like thriving. I was like going crazy in this sea of change. I love it. Finally, this is what I was born for. Like, it was the best. And obviously not great, a pandemic. Like, there are plenty of things that happen that aren't cool and all of that, but at the same time, like, it was hugely informative for me to get to see, like, in terms of establishing myself in my adulthood phase of existence, it was just another layer of getting to see what I was capable of, doing things that I had never done before because I was rising up to meet life where it was, rather than being like, well, this is what I know how to do, so this is who I'm going to be in the world. I stepped forward and was like, I don't know the answer, but we're going to have to figure it out as we go. We're going to have to build the plane while we fly it because, like, we need to keep up with the rapid changes that happened at the beginning of the pandemic. In May of 2020 is when I got my first puppy. So that was like a whole nother step up in responsibility that I feel like Stella definitely helped prepare me for, but I had never had a puppy before because Stella was like 2 when I adopted her. And so having a puppy is like a whole nother level of responsibility and effort and all of that. And then in July of 2020, which is super fascinating because this is also when the North Node entered Gemini and the South Node entered Sagittarius. It was like within just a little while of the North Node getting into Gemini was when I basically had this like realization that I'm ready for my life coach. I'm ready. Whoever that is, like, I feel like they're ready for me. I'm ready for them. At that point, I had the idea to ask Jody, because Jody is a working life coach along with a massage therapist. So she came through like a whole training program. So she knows lots of life coaches. And I asked her, like, hey, do you have a recommendation of somebody that you think I might work really well with? And she's like, oh, I know you would love my life coach, Melissa. You've got to meet her. So I emailed her. And just a few weeks later, I'm meeting with Melissa in August of 2020. And that was the first time I'd ever seen or heard of a natal chart, was in August of 2020, because I decided to work with this life coach. And all I knew is that I wanted a life coach. I didn't have any kinds of like wanting an astrology life coach or even knowing that there was such a thing as a natal chart. So that was like another little way that like you really don't have to have the destination in mind to be able to get where you're going. And again, I think I wanted to share all of this extra unfolding because look at that. Like, as far as now where I'm at 4.5 years later, almost 34, astrology and me coaching people, me making content and putting it out in the world, like this is where I'm going. Like this is who I want to be in the world. And it wasn't like that astrology came to me during my Saturn return, but I think if I hadn't like done the things that I did during my Saturn return, one, I never would have given that speech where she told me to like look up Jody, and I wouldn't have become friends with her and heard all about her life coaching experiences, which I think was definitely part of me getting ready for my own experience. Like that kind of stoked my fires of that desire. And so, yeah, it's like the seeds were planted back when I was opening a grocery store, the seeds of me being a spiritual practitioner and finding astrology and teaching astrology online, like those seeds were planted way back when I was like just opening a grocery store. So all of it gets woven together in ways where we just can't even anticipate how perfect it can possibly be. It was just a couple months after I very first saw my own natal chart that I gave my first paid reading in October of 2020. In December of 2020, I filed my LLC. So this is my natal chart for the inception of my business, which has many interesting synastry aspects with my own. I think most notable that my business midheaven is 0 degrees Taurus and my personal ascendant is 0 degrees Taurus. So that seems to be a pretty intentional degree point for me and like what I came to do here. And the way I understand Taurus is that like it's energy where you're here to find peace. You're here to get your peace foot forward. You're here to get a big dose of that for your own soul and perpetuate it out into the world for others. And so especially like that's my personal rising sign. That's how I approach the world. And now my business has a 0 degrees Taurus midheaven. And that's the point of my business, is to incite greater levels of peace on this planet. In February of 2021 was when I started my first podcast. It was a few months after that I started my second podcast. Also in April of 2021 was my first grocery consulting contract. So I haven't really ever like made a specific video saying like, here's how I make my money, but essentially how I make my money is from grocery consulting projects. And that's what gives me the flexibility to be able to do my YouTube channel kind of in between all of that. And again, it's like, you know, if I didn't have grocery consulting, it would be nearly impossible to have all of this free time to make my astrology content. And it's not that I learned how to be a grocery consultant during my Saturn return, but if I hadn't opened and operated and optimized my own grocery store during my Saturn return, I would have no expertise to be like being a consultant. So it's like all of the different pieces, like they just continue to unfold. Like it's not over once your Saturn return is over necessarily. Like it's like groundwork gets laid. It's an initiation. It's the beginning, the setting of the stage for what is ultimately going to unfold for the next 29 and a half years. So in July of 2021 was when I got what I would consider to be more of a full-time grocery consulting contract. So it allowed me to officially take a full step away from the store and its operations, and somebody else was managing it now 7 days a week, so that 7 days a week I am free to do my grocery consulting and whatever else I feel like doing. At that time, I only had a podcast, and it was only like a month later that I got really serious about posting on YouTube and started my YouTube journey because I had no video editing skills to speak of at all. I knew how to like record a Zoom and then upload it. So that's pretty limited. So I started off my YouTube journey by doing a daily content challenge where I wasn't trying to record every day, but I was trying to release every day. So I would sit down and record like for a few hours and get 5 or 6 videos. And now I have stuff to record every day for the next week. I just got to chop it down and package it and upload it. So I did like 85 days of a daily posting challenge. And then it was to the point where I was like, I don't need to do this. I'm just going to post when it's fun because I feel like I've developed the skills that I wanted to get out of that daily posting challenge. And that basically brings us to where I am today. I am finishing up that grocery contract that I got last July. And I don't really know what's going to happen after that. I'm going to go back to being a consultant who is now looking for her next project. And in the meantime, while that unfolds, I'm just really excited to rededicate myself to owning authenticity, my spiritual practice in general, and see what unfolds, right? Like the divine timing of the way the pieces come together is so much easier to see when we look back at it like this. Like, you know, while we're in the middle of it, it can feel random, it can feel chaotic, it can feel like, why on earth am I opening a grocery store of all things? And it's like path of least resistance. Path of least resistance and the path of greatest allowing. And, you know, I think there was part of my higher self that had it in the plan all along that grocery is a perfect amalgamation of all the skills you've learned so far and that it's going to lead to this consulting work, which gives you the exact flexibility you've always wanted. So I think it was like even before I opened my grocery store that I knew I want to work online, I want to be able to travel, I want to be like a nomad and go wherever I feel like going. If I want to spend 2 months in Costa Rica, I want to go do that. So this felt really counterintuitive when it's like, hey, move back to your hometown and open a brick and mortar grocery store. It's like, wait, that's not what I wanted. And yet, when you let it play out a few years, it is exactly what I got. I got a grocery consulting package now that allows me to have the flexibility that I want, and it allows me to make money in a way where I love the quote that says, like, let 20% of your time make 80% of your money. And for me, it's like, let 20% of your time make 100% of your money. And then everything I do on YouTube is like a cherry on top. It's like any other income that my spiritual business is able to generate is extra because my grocery consulting is able to support me. And so, yeah, it's like all of the different ways that what happens during the Saturn return is only a preview for the next 3 decades. And I'm only 4.5 years in. So I don't know how it's going to keep going, but I would love to come back and like update this video here in like another 5 years and see what else unfolded from those seeds that got planted, right around my 29th birthday. Thank you for listening. I hope you found value here. I hope it's hopefully helped to open up the perception of Saturn and how consequences is really a neutral word. It's not a bad word. It's neutral, and it can be whatever we make of it, and how every single decision point that comes up in your Saturn return is ultimately asking you, who do you want to be in the world? You're moving into adulthood with every single one of those choice points, and you get to write the script. It gets to be exactly what you want it to be. And the universe finds a way to reward you, even if you think that you're like my bonus story, like even where I felt I was foregoing that money, I was like, the universe can bring me way more than that money. Like, I'm not going to hang myself up here. I'm going to go ahead and be true to myself, be authentic to what feels right to me, and let the universe figure out the rest. And the universe always figures out the rest. When we are true to ourselves, that's us walking on the path that our soul originally intended. And it's like every single cooperative component that's going to help us with our soul's mission already perfectly and naturally exists on your soul's path. So like the only thing that's ever like out of whack is either you're on the path or you're not. And I know when I got engaged, I was very much playing a game of musical chairs, like I said, and that like walking away from that like script or that like normal recipe of like, okay, well, I'm this old, so it's time to get married and have kids. Like walking away from that was literally the best thing I've ever done for myself. And what has unfolded since then is, in my mind, nothing short of magical in terms of like all that was ever missing was me choosing me. And as soon as I did that, everything else fell into place. So thank you again for listening. I would love to hear your Saturn return stories down below. And yeah, if you have any questions or anything else that you would like me to talk about related to Saturn returns, I would be more than happy to answer those questions if you leave them below. And until next time, dear friends, you take such good care of yourselves, and so will I.